name is Allie Belzer. I am a licensed professional counselor, a specialist in experiential education, and a clinical adventure therapist.
My name is Amanda Reedy, a licensed clinical social worker working as a mental health therapist. We believe therapy is a great tool for healing. However, we want to demystify what healing can look like, as in our experience, people care for themselves in creative, intuitive, and determined ways.
Each episode, we will get curious about healing that is outside traditional talk therapy and deconstruct how healing can be a practice that is innate to who we are. Just as singing is to birds and making honey is to bees, it's just what we do. Let's get it. Hi all, thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, me and Amanda talk to Liz Hardwick, an integral coach and a long-term expedition guide who has found a beautiful purpose and place at the intersection between nature and healing. And in our conversation, we determine that we are of nature and nature is of us. And to deny our closeness to the wild world is to deny pieces of our own souls. As you listen, I hope you notice how nature calls to you in this moment. Thanks so much for listening. Stay close. Yeah, why don't you start by, can you just introduce yourself and what you do?
My name's Liz Hardwick. I am an integral coach and a facilitator. And I also spent a lot of my adult life leading expeditions in the backcountry. And so I went from this kind of amazing world of getting to work with groups of 10 to 15 people for 30 days in these really intensive settings and having totally life-changing experiences, to then trying to figure out how to like come home and come indoors a little bit. And sort of building a family, getting a little bit more stable. Finding coaching was an amazing gift for me, and it was kind of the closest thing that this sort of transformation that happens on wilderness expeditions, getting to watch and feel that kind of at home here on Zoom for it was just, I think, such an honor to see this sort of similar arc of people doing really brave and bold things. So I've been coaching since 2019, and it feels like such a gift. And I think the last year or two, I, with another friend who's an integral coach and also comes from the same kind of outdoor background, we started doing expeditions. So bringing the coaching experience into the wilderness expedition. And that has been truly amazing to watch what happens for folks when we're doing a sort of deep development dive into our own sort of human edges, and then also doing that in this setting of like being out, unhooked from regular life, doing things that for a lot of people feel really edgy and kind of first time ever, backpacking or canoe tripping. And doing that in that setting, in this, in a wild place, and where nature is just like teaching on all levels. It's been so exciting for me to watch this unfold.
Yeah. I noticed this the last time we talked too, like your face and voice, even as you talk about it, is like you're shocked. You're still surprised daily about like how impactful what you do is.
Yeah, I think there's a humblingness to it and also just a truth to it. Like, as I was starting to build this program up and get it off the ground, I plenty of hesitation, and it's hard to, do the sort of hustle, offer a new thing out into the universe. And the people around me watching me would be like, oh my gosh, as soon as you start talking about this, your whole body changes. And I think that kind of knowing of like, oh yeah, no, this is really important, and I think it's a really beautiful gift to offer, and has been even more gratifying to see people kind of coming out the other side and being like, wow, like this was healing and growing and changing in ways that none of us could have imagined. So yeah.
My history is in wilderness therapy too, and I'm a nature-based therapist in general. So so passionate about even the act of bringing an intentional action outside or intentional processing, bringing intention into the outdoors, into wild places. It becomes a vacuum where like everything else is kind of stripped away, and you can just like approach with such clarity the work you're doing.
Oh, I love that.
What is your relationship to therapy, specifically like the word therapy? What has that meant to you, like historically and even now?
Gosh, I love the question about how I relate to the word. I think right now my relationship to therapy is deeply dependent and really nourished by highly Wednesday afternoon is a really important time for me. For my own therapy. And I think, I mean, I have like woven in and out of being in therapy for most of my adult life. Therapy, therapeutic, like how do we heal? How do we become more whole? How do we evolve as humans to be for more connection and more belonging? I mean, I think that's a huge question. And I think therapy can, sitting in an office, talking to somebody on Zoom every Wednesday for an hour, can look a particular way, and I think it's like taken up a particular like shape in our culture. And I don't know, I think I've had some of the deepest insight and growth and sort of changing moments, or kind of like arriving at myself moments, that haven't necessarily happened inside a therapist office. But I think I do really believe, and this is what brings me to coaching too, is that our like path as humans on this planet is to heal. We do that a variety of different ways. And like that our impulse as human beings is towards more connection, more freedom, more wholeness. And all of us are sort of weaving our way in that direction in some form or another.
Yeah. You're speaking our language, Liz, because I think like the whole point of this podcast, masochistic as it may be, since we are therapists, is that our current definition of therapy is super limiting. And like to move away from the idea that healing is something you have to pay for and tools, a skill set that you learn, rather than, I've been saying this a lot, like healing is as innate to us as singing is to birds or making honey is to bees. It's our natural inclination to like grow, heal, and connect. And you put that so beautifully, of the biggest moments have not necessarily happened in an office.
And it doesn't have to start from a disordered place, as if we have to be pathologized and have a medical diagnosis before we deem it valid to seek healing. We bend towards healing. Our path is healing, like you said. We're always innately trying to return to a state of connection, belonging, and understanding of ourselves.
And I love that. I just love what you're saying, and how, I mean, I think about this all the time. I talk about it with clients. I remind myself, it's like in this moment, all three of us are healing just now, just by virtue of breathing and being together on this planet.
That's good. Yeah. Well, when I worked at a primary health clinic as a social work intern, but it served our resettled population for folks who had arrived to this country as refugees. And we did trauma-informed care. And the biggest emphasis was that every moment has the potential to be a healing encounter. From the receptionist at the front to, the CNA, to the person who helps with your paperwork, to the doctor, to the social worker. It's like every person that you meet has potential to be a healing encounter.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I remember the first counseling office I went to that had like a pride flag, or there was like just a little pin that said like you're safe here. And like I went into the office crying because I was just so limited and lost. And like the moment you see one touch of belonging and intention and connect with it, it hits right to the core like a beam of lightning.
I had a moment the other day I've been, struggling a lot in some real big grief and loss pieces lately. And a guy, I live in a rural community in Wyoming, a guy was like driving up the road and he just like looked at me with this real sort of light, loving expression on his face. And everybody in Wyoming waves from their truck, but he like lifted his hand. And I just had this like, wow, I've just been like so touched by this stranger driving by, looking at me. That did not happen in my therapist's office. That happened with a stranger on the street.
No, we are so powerful as beings that a complete stranger, can light up their face and have something happen within you. There was a time in my life I was very dependent on the crossing guard that I drove past every day, and she would stand and wave at every single car with so much love, and then every once in a while she wouldn't be there, and I'd be like, is she okay?
Am I okay?
I didn't realize so much of my well-being depended on that wave first thing on my commute to work.
I like to say I cry at any moment of human sincerity. Like that's what will get me the quickest. Any authentic moment in any context, I'm done.
Thank you for crying frequently.
Oh my God. If I could, as if I could stop it. We just kind of determined that it's a very broad spectrum of what can be therapy. So to then like narrow it down again, maybe we'll keep it loose. But it sounds like you are really passionate about gathering in natural spaces with intention and bringing us to like the edge of growth change. Can you tell me more actually about that word you use, edge?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So the framework or structure of what I do, and I do this with my partner, Lindsay, we lead expeditions that are typically a week long. And folks are doing a coaching program. So integral coaching does a lot of work around metaphor and imagining like new possibilities, allowing sort of new ways of seeing and being in the world kind of come on board in whatever area that we're, feeling stuck or limited or bumping up against over and over again. And so we start with this integral coaching process and then take folks out into the wilderness on an expedition. And what are the edges that people are bumping up on? All of them are like in so many different ways. I think that's the beauty of, being on an expedition is people be coming in being like, wow, this is the first time I have ever put a backpack on my back and the first time I am walking. And like, I just need to know that I can do this. And part of understanding that I can do this allows me to then know that like, I can live in the grief of my partner who died last year. Like, you know, like that there's like the act of going on an expedition and like, whoa, I like hiked through Yellowstone feels like a huge edge. For other people, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm like letting people see me and see my vulnerability and see my rawness. And yeah, it's a big deal to live with a group of people for 7 days in a small, tight knit community, and you don't, you know, we're bear camping, you don't get to escape. And so that can feel like a huge edge for people. I think for some folks, it's like just like knowing their okayness, like coming out into an experience that, you know, one participant last year was talking about like, oh, I thought I was going to be like unraveled and raw and kind of exploded open. And I like came out of this like so nourished and feeling so whole and feeling so like centered and true to myself, you know, like, so I think the edge can look really different for a lot of people. And I think the container of, I mean, Allie is a wilderness therapist and a nature based therapist. Like, you know, this, it's like nature gives us what we need to feel into what the next, like what is on the edge of our becoming, I guess.
I say that a lot is like, can you use nature to co-regulate? Like a lot of my clients have such fear in being witnessed by others, or like no one can handle what I'm going through right now. And for some, I don't want to like degrade that. Like maybe your social life right now does not have the capacity to hold this with you, right? And I'm just one person you meet an hour a week. So I will say, like, you know who can always hold it? The tree in your backyard. Like any
Absolutely.
moment where you can connect with these beings in nature as living embodied friends that can help you hold what you're carrying, whatever it may be.
Oh, yeah, Allie, you are speaking my love language right now.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, like I mean, I experience it personally, this sense of like when I can like truly feel my kinship, it's like, oh right, like how can I ever feel alone in the world? Like how is that even possible? I think what happens for me and what I notice happening for folks is that we become a little bit more porous to what is available, and like the porousness of nature or wilder places, I think for me is such a short circuit to understanding my belonging in really fundamental ways. The tree does not care if you fucked up a conversation. The tree is not judging you for like not having your whatever financial world in order. You know, like the tree does not give a shit. The tree is like, hello,
no, that tree
hello,
lives in
being.
abundance all the time.
Yeah, and it's like generously giving. Like here's my shade. Here's the place to sit. Here's the trunk you can wrap your arms around and like press your cheek on and feel touched and held. Like,
you clearly at this point have like this open, like you said, porous, curious, and like I'm gonna venture and say sacred relationship with nature. I just want to like rewind a little bit and ask, like, when did that start for you? Like, what made you like first so curious about this world?
oh, what a cool question. Dang, I think it's old. I mean, as a kid, like as a 4-year-old, I like packed my backpack and would run away and go and sit in. I'm from Canada. I grew up in Ontario beside a river, and I would pack my backpack, walk down to the riverbank, and like walk upstream along the river and have a little nest, and I would like nest in there and like hang out, and then eventually like toddle my way home. But like that was there was sort of this respite quality for me of going to sit in my willow tree and hang out. And yeah, I think I could spend a lot of time in therapy wondering why I was running away. And I think what I came to over time is like, oh no, I was running too.
Yeah.
Like I was going to where I knew.
Yeah, sounds like so that you could walk back home. So you were capable of walking back home. You had to spend time and roost and nest and rest.
Yeah, maybe. I know that impulse. It's always strong in me. My kids are older now, but I had 2 children under 2 years old for a period of time. Oh my God, is that what you're in right now?
Yeah. I have a 9-month-old and I have a 2
Wow.
and some change, and 2.5-year-old.
Oh.
She said, I'm going to be late. And I said, of course you are.
Of course
I really
you
tried my
are.
best.
Of course you are. I don't know if you'll relate to this, but I just like sit there with like, I would like sit there with, I was like breastfeeding 2 babies at one point, and I would like look out at the mountains and just be like, have this like pull of like, how do I get there? I do think my edge is to like allow myself to be there here. Like I don't have to be roaming out in the mountains to allow myself to feel touched, feel whole, feel held.
That it becomes integrated, that you carry it with you.
Yeah, that there's less of this binary of like out there and in here.
That kind of brings us to our like next big question, actually, is that like with using nature as like a healing relationship almost, there is like, I think, a lot of gatekeeping in expeditions, wilderness in general, and specifically like outdoor recreation, both in cost and just safety and representation in outdoors. So yeah, if we could all touch on for a moment, like how flexible and accessible is the use of this tool, I guess, that we're talking about today, or this practice.
Yeah, no, I love that question, and I think it weighs heavy, or it like lives in me for sure in terms of, yeah, like even the word wilderness is like comes from this like leisure class white folks who were like, how do we go and recreate in the wilderness? And I think that even demarcates this kind of, yeah, like class privilege and whiteness that sort of allows us to, me as a white person, this is definitely my lineage, but like, oh, I can like go escape into these like wild places where often we're talking about places that are like traditional homelands, or like they're not like wild savage wilderness, they are like homes and places of like long relationship that we kind of erase by calling things wilderness. So there's that. There's like, sure, the outdoor recreation industry that, creates all kinds of barriers in terms of like who's there, who's allowed in, how it's gate kept, how it's even seen as, desirable, or like, oh, hell no. Like, yeah, like what does your people's lineage say is like, oh yeah, that's what we do, or that's what we don't do. I am not advocate like, oh, I do not think we all need to put on backpacks and go walk into the wilderness. Like no. And there's like really good reasons not to do that. And there's I think just a continual examination of like, yeah, how is it that, if we create a sort of, again, a spiritual gatekeeping of like, oh, if you want to connect with nature, you have to go climb to the, a high peak in the Himalayas. And I think getting yeah, we need to like deconstruct all that stuff, and also getting underneath. It's like, wow, like whiteness and white supremacy culture has like taught us to be separate from nature, to see it as other, less than, that's a place that we control and dominate. And I think that just harms us. And anything that we can do that deconstructs or like lets us come back into kinship and into relationship and see ourselves as part of and not separate from, to me is like radically important work. And I think all cultures have a relationship to land and to place and to the more than human world. And the more that we can like understand that both as our responsibility and our birthright, the better. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, like the more we mimic nature and develop relationship with nature, like that's a direct mirror of how we heal like the human world.
Right.
Like the way nature treats itself, like and like those who live in it. Like, yeah, I think that's been coming up a lot for me as like I'm developing like a business practice where I'm like, I want to do therapy in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find myself having these words that clearly came from colonization of we separated from land, reclaimed what it meant to go into nature, and then worded it so that we could make it profitable. And like that's just like the cycle that like all colonized places. Yeah, so just like finding the new words like connection, kinship, really trying to emphasize that nature is, I'm actually going to I was going to say nature is yours, but you are nature's. You belong to nature.
Well, and that almost takes me back to the idea of like, yeah, we are healing. Like in this moment, we are healing. And in this moment, I am nature. Right? Like the way that we say, like, go to nature or be in nature, it sort of, again, does that removal thing. It's like,
I am nature.
This thing right now, I am nature.
How, in your experience with clients and just in your own life, can you share some stories of how you've seen nature help people get closer to themselves?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I love. Yeah, gosh. Well, and there's so many elements I think that are happening on expeditions. I think part of it is this like this community piece and this like being held by yeah, like a really like when else do you get to like actually like create culture in a little like petri dish and be like, okay, this is how we're going to experiment with being with each other. And of course we're bringing our shit in from where we come from and our conditioning. And there's just this like really amazing opportunity to like say like, okay, we get to decide how we relate to each other. And we get to do it in these, yeah, liberatory and healing ways. You know, one person I'm thinking of in particular had a knee injury on the expedition. And so had to do this like really incredible work of like taking stuff out of her backpack and putting it in other people's backpacks. And for this particular person who had a really strong survival tendency to armor and to protect herself and to like not see the world as safe and not see the world as a place that was going to like offer her care, to have to be like, oh, I have to like rely on these people and then keep walking in this through this place with an injury, having been so humbled, like having, I mean, it's huge to say like, oh, I can't carry my stuff in my back. I mean, it sounds really simple now, but like that moment, well, I remember.
I'm crying right
now. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I have this visual of like pulling this bag of food out and being like, I'm gonna put it in your backpack.
Having and then a somatic physical representation of the belief of being a burden
Mm.
towards others if you require assistance or help, or if your foundation of value is what you give and offer and hold for other people. It's like to have something physically say, I cannot hold this because it's harming me to carry this weight. I'm gonna let someone else feel heavier and practice tolerating the distress of letting someone carry something for you is so powerful.
Oh, it's yes. And I think then the lightness of, like that day, this particular person was like able to walk lighter and was like, oh, I could see more texture in the trees and in the forest.
Wow.
Right?
And an experience like that is such a tangible experiential reframe too, of people who she thought her Everest that day, her greatest edge was proving she could get there with the weight. But how quickly it can change, like, oh no, your real true challenge was to be able to ask for help. It just feels almost easy when, like, on these expeditions or in nature, when people gather in nature doing hard things, it's like we get straight to it. You'll learn so quickly what you need to learn.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. That line is so perfect. Like, I think that is the generosity of nature, is like, okay, like whatever the edge is, whatever the gift that you need in this moment, it's like nature's going to offer it.
Yeah.
What about, I kind of want to turn that question, like, what about for you all? How have you seen or felt or learned something that really needed to unfold for you, that sort of required that relational piece in nature to let it unfold?
Well, one, like, it makes my job as a therapist so much easier because I don't really need to guide. I just need to point out what they do. Like, oh, look how you did this when you put on your packer. Look how you did this when you harvested that sage to clean the bowl. Like, I just have to point it out, and they then make the connection. So yeah, this is what it means for me. So one, it's like the best co-therapist I could ever ask for, because they do all the work and I'm just watching. So that feels really special. And just through metaphor, the line I use a lot is, our bodies and our emotions don't speak English. They speak through ancestral imagery and sensation. And the quickest way to get on the same page as our internal experience is through nature, because that is ancient symbolism for us. So I just think of nature as the Google translator of our souls. It can just shift things that we understand them so quickly. And I just love it. I'm obsessed with it.
I hear in there this release, like, Allie, for you as a therapist, to be like, oh, it's not up to you, or it's not like you doing the thing, or saying the brilliant thing, or offering the opening, or almost this invitation to kind of get out of the way. Or
it helps me release my own agenda, that I need to fix this person. I can give nature full trust.
Right.
So much of my work is in an office, right? I'm not guiding out in the wilderness. My people come to me in a more traditional, we sit couch chair type relationship, or experience. But the way that the model of therapy that I use, which is pretty IFS-y, if you know anything about internal family systems.
Yeah.
But we are inviting nature in when we do something called an unburdening in that model. And it asks folks to unburden, and what would you like to release this belief or burden to? And very similar to what Ali is saying is that there is an internal wisdom, even when the element is not physical or tangible in the room, that our imagination and our beings bring nature into that visualized space, and they will say this burden requires fire, water, earth, air, and we are doing that in an office without even touching these elements. And because our bodies and our visualization and imagination is so powerful, we feel the elements taking that burden and transforming it and releasing it, which is so powerful that we can do that. But I think that same answers exist within, which is another example of we are nature.
Yeah.
Even when we are not in wilderness.
Yeah.
The wilderness is within us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how powerful then of when, now since we're talking so much about how do we actually return and feel those elements to reinforce an unburdening, how powerful it is. Okay, in this therapy's office space, you did this, and now can you actually go to the Boise River and dunk your body in
Yeah.
and reinforce that so your body feels the elements as much as your imagination felt it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm pinging so hard just because I sort of, as a coach, I work as sort of as an IFS informed coach, and I'm like, oh right, like, you know, giving something up to earth or wind or fire or water feels so intuitive, but I've never actually made that connection of like, oh right, like that is putting us directly in nature. And yeah, like I think one of the threads I've been really pulling on lately is just ritual. Is like how do we land ourselves back in these like patterns that are so much older than our little conscious brains can hold, and like allow ourselves into these kind of like settling, healing rhythms and rituals that have like go back ways that but yeah, that was beautiful. I just sort of like felt this ka-chunk happen of like, oh right, that's what we're doing, right? That's what we're doing. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's such a good reminder what you just said too, that like it didn't start with us. Like it did not start with nature-based therapists and wilderness therapy. There is like, if you're just listening to audio, we're like signaling way back behind us of like that we got a root in something so deep and so old.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Liz, you're the best, and I need you to never forget that. Yeah, to kind of wrap things up, can you share a little bit about how people maybe reach you personally?
Sure.
And professionally?
Yeah, probably professionally.
Probably professionally.
I mean, I am a connection junkie. I want to.
Sure. But we're not recruiting friends here.
I'll take friends. I can like walk down the street and make friends any day. Yeah, no, I work through, I guess my business is One Wildlife Coaching, and then the expeditions piece kind of lives as a passion and love project on the side of my coaching business. But what that means is we do expeditions. The goal is 3 times a year. Our trip coming up in February is horsepacking in Patagonia, which offers a whole other element of like co-regulation and like being in relation when you have this whole other like very large nervous system to be in relationship with every day, and to be this like mirror and reflection and grounding point. So yeah, working with horses is a whole other conversation that I'm sure could be its own episode.
So cool.
And the website is onewildlifecoaching.com/expeditions to find out about the trips. Wow.
Well, yeah, each episode we like to pair with like an experience. We're trying to actually live it and not just talk about it. And this episode's great because we already kind of live it as like nature as the metaphor in IFS, and then as a wilderness coach. But yeah, feeling so excited to hopefully get together again and do it and see it in person, how this work can bring us closer to ourselves, each other, and our world. So
Allie, Amanda, it's like so special to just get to like share space with you and speak about the things that we love. And yeah, I feel like I'm just sort of basking in it. What a gift. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone, and stay close. Stay close. Do you want to say stay close?
I do. I want to stay close.
Thanks so much for listening to That's My Therapy. As a general disclaimer, the topics discussed in this podcast are just one unique perspective, not prescriptive mental health advice. May you find healing where it finds you. If you are feeling suicidal or in need of immediate help, you can reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988.
Yeah, I feel glowy. We all look like little eels on the screen right now.
Bopping. We're bopping.
We're bopping.